Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Live with Marketers. It's LinkedIn's first ever award-winning talk show for marketers by marketers, where we bring on some of the brightest minds in the B2B space, and we talk about all of the topics that are most important to you and your business. So today's topic is 2022 B2B Marketing Trends. We all are dying to get our hands on them. And we're excited to reflect back upon the year that we have just had, what to leave behind, what to bring forward. Without further ado, I want to, by the way, my name's Alex Rand, but you guys already knew that. I work at LinkedIn, but I'm really excited to share our guests who kind of don't need an introduction, but I will introduce them anyway. We have Handley and Carla Johnson, marketing legends. I would love for each of you, Ann and Carla, to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do and share your favorite trend that emerged in 2021.
Hi, everyone.
You guys are laughing already. Nothing has been said.
I know. I'm just like, who goes first? Is it Carla? Is it alphabetical first?
Draw straws. Like literally with paper and pen, we should draw straws to see who goes first. I'm pretty sure with Ann's art talent, she's going to win because somehow she can make a straw look spectacular.
I don't know about that, Carla. You're selling yourself short. So therefore, I guess you drew the short straw. Get it? So I guess I go first.
There you go.
Anyway, hi, everyone. I'm Ann Handley, Chief Content Officer at Marketing Profs, as you can see by the lower third that just popped up there on my face. And yeah, I'm excited to be here to put to rest the year that was and look ahead a little bit to 2022. In terms of my favorite trend that we saw emerge in B2B marketing in 2021, I mean, considering that I am a content marketer and that I have spent so much of my career thinking and writing and speaking about content marketing, it has to be not exactly the rise of content marketing, but I think the cementing of content marketing in B2B marketing. I mean, so many B2B marketers have been using content in some way to connect with customers and prospects all, in the past 10 years or so. But I think, in a post-pandemic world, we've definitely seen content becoming even more critical to B2B transactions, to the B2B marketing and sales process. And I have a stat that bears that out. We found in our content marketing research that, look at this, look at that, 66% of B2B marketers are planning to increase their content budgets heading into 2022 from 2021. So that's big. That's a big number. It's a big trend. So that's my top pick.
That is big. I love that. And I love the sign. Spoiler alert, more signs to come. So get excited because I was very, very impressed by both of their creative skills. Carla, go ahead.
All right, I'm Carla Johnson. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. And thanks for taking time to end this year, which was supposed to be the year of getting back to normal. And if this is normal, that's going to make the rest of this time really interesting. But my work, I'm a marketing and innovation strategist, and I've worked with B2B marketers my whole career to help them rethink the work that they do and the impact that they can have through emerging trends and technologies and approaches to marketing. And to extend on what Ann talked about, the big thing that she saw this year with content, I think the next step is a true appreciation for storytelling and what it really means in the B2B world. And I think out of that, I started my career as a writer, and I think really seeing the value of great storytelling driven writing has been something I've been so happy to see. And it's a good thing, and it's a real challenge, because I think finding really good experienced writers who understand how to create story in the B2B world is still something that brands have a challenge with. But I think that's one of the things that have been happiest to see this year is, along with cementing content marketing, is moving it into that next stage and really cementing the need and appreciation for storytelling in B2B marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think this is probably one of those like marketing buzzwords that we want to, that's not hot, that's cold, that we want to leave in the past. But it's difficult for brands to also do that authentically. And that's the buzzword that I know that everyone's going to cringe at. But when you're sharing your narrative and you're telling stories as a brand, and it can be kind of easy to get it wrong if you're kind of leaning into things that aren't even relevant to your product, which I've seen. So anyway, all right, let's talk about everything that's changed this year. I know every year we're like, everything has changed in this ever evolving landscape, blah, blah, blah. But like, seriously, like there's so much that has changed this year. Like Carla said, it was the year that we were supposed to get back to normal, but we're not quite there yet. Progress, not perfection. What do you think has changed? What has surprised you? And I'll go ahead and start with Carla.
I think what changed is that all of this stuff that we've been talking about for quite a few years as B2B marketers really became evident that it is as important as we've been saying it is for all these years. Focusing on a true content strategy that delivers value to your customers, focusing on that storytelling, adding more human empathy, emotions into B2B marketing. I think that's what really, really changed. And I think a little bit of what surprised me is the range of ways that B2B brands really bit into that. Some of them went wholehearted into this and really, I think, brought out content that may have even surprised them, but really amped up that relationship that they have with their customers and their audience overall. And I think that was the biggest thing that I really saw that surprised me and really delighted me too.
Yep, completely agree. I mean, the rise of content creation has soared, especially because everything's digital now. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's all been great content. But that's a conversation for another time. The previous Live with Marketers that I did was all around our report that we do annually with Edelman on thought leadership. And we basically found that thought leadership content has soared in production, but the amount of it that decision makers actually deem as like good or relevant the percentage is very small. So anyway, that's why I mentioned that. I'm going to pass it to Anne now to talk about what you think, what were the topics? What was everyone talking about? What was important?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, so much. In terms of, what really bubbled to the top. I mean, a few things. I think in marketing we saw, in 2021, the Great Resignation. It wasn't specific just to marketing, of course, but we saw it across, almost every industry. There's just been such upheaval, right? Just in our world in the past, 18 months, almost 2 years now that, and I think we've seen lots of people just reevaluate where they are in their lives and specifically where they work and what they're doing for their career and their jobs and so on. And so we did, marketing definitely saw a piece of that, of the Great Resignation. The piece that surprised me in that is seeing organizations try and in some cases really succeed in thinking about, well, how do we hold on to the people that we have? And sometimes that comes down to, more money, more flexibility, all the things that we typically see. But I also saw a number of organizations think about the training and education programs that they're providing their marketers, their marketing teams, especially, getting them all on the same page, really invigorating them. And I saw that, from my work at Marketing Profs, we're a training and education company, but also just, the work that I do personally, where CMOs would ask me to come in and sort of galvanize the team together, that kind of thing. So maybe not quite related to the work of marketers, but I think relating to the marketers, right? So not necessarily the output, but who we are and how we do the work.
Yeah, I love the focus on talent brand. And one of our leaders here at LinkedIn said that you need to really focus on your internal customer experience before you can really refine your external customer experience. And I thought that was really interesting and so spot on, because if there's a bad experience at your company, like people talk. We talk about our experiences, we post on social media, we're hashtag LinkedIn Live, hashtag, whatever else. And if you don't have a good internal corporate reputation, people won't want to come to your brand. People won't want to buy from you because people buy from people, not from brands.
100%.
Yeah, I think that it became more evident this year, more than ever, because people are deciding, do I even want to stay at this company? Do I even want to stay in the workforce? Do I want to go start my own company? And all of those things that we kind of, put up with or didn't really have a choice with, things really changed this year. That's a great point, Anne.
Thank you, Carla.
You guys are like newscasters. Back to you.
Back to you in the studio, Anne.
No, back to you, Alex.
Well, thank you. And another thing that I wanted to touch on that I don't think we have quite yet is live stream fatigue. And here we are doing a live stream talking about live stream fatigue. So I get it's very meta, but we did a broadcast recently around live stream fatigue. Everyone is broadcasting. And so I think that's another thing that we've seen a rise of video, which is great. Much needed, and people want to see the people behind the brands. People want to see the B2B marketing creators, not just what they're creating, which has been an interesting shift as well. But what have you guys seen in terms of live stream fatigue, like on your own personal channels or for your own companies or for your clients?
What live stream fatigue? Where? Look at us. We're having a great time. Right? I guess what I've seen isn't so much live stream fatigue. That's hard to say when you drink as much as I do. No, I'm kidding. That's hard to say. Kidding. I'm totally kidding. That's just hard to say. So I haven't seen necessarily as much live stream fatigue, but I have seen marketers realizing that they need to push the boundaries a little bit when it comes to live stream and when it comes to producing video content to engage audiences. And so I think what I've seen is that, we used to be able to, especially in B2B, create like an on-demand something, like an on-demand webinar or an on-demand, conversation like this one, and then put it out there. And you could assume that, a percent of your audience would engage with it. But I think those days are gone, because now on-demand means I want to get to it, but I will never get to it, right? Because there's just so many other literal demands on our time. And so I think every video program that you create has to have some sort of live trigger to action. And the second thing, in addition to a live trigger to action, is that I think it has to have, what I mean by that, by the way, just let me explain that. What I mean is it has to have some live component to get people to show up and actually watch you live, because without that actual trigger, I think it just doesn't happen. So 100% recorded event, 100% recorded virtual event, training, workshop, a conversation like this, any of those things, I think they just, as well-meaning as your audience might be, that just doesn't happen. So it has to have some live component to it. And the second thing is, I think you have to make it a little bit fun and interactive. I think this goes back to what Carla was saying a second ago, just about, allowing B2B to show a little personality, to turn that camera around and not just show the product of what we're doing, but who is creating it. And create some fun around that. Like, I think that's what we've tried to do here. Alex put together a fantastic program. We have all these fun segments that we're going to do. It wasn't just like, let's show up and let's talk about B2B in as staid and serious a manner as we possibly can. Instead, it becomes, hey, let's have a conversation between three incredible women, or at least two incredible women, being them and one mediocre one, me, in B2B marketing. And put some parameters around it, make it fun, make it feel like an event. So
yeah, I actually set aside all of 2022 to watch all of the content that I said I would show up live for, but didn't, and told myself I would watch it. But I think it's a good point. I think back to the humanization of everything in marketing, and I think people really want that connection. Yeah. And when they have the personality along with the experience, that's what gets them to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agree. And speaking of interactive experiences, we're saving around 10 minutes at the end of this broadcast to answer your questions. So please feel free to send them through in the chat. If you're on LinkedIn Live or if you're on Slido, send them through. We'll get to them at the very end. So thanks, Anne, for that reminder.
Oh, you're welcome.
It would definitely be remiss if we didn't talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is something that's been very important initiative at LinkedIn on the show, on this broadcast, however little that effort may be, but the white man has kind of been like the token on this show, and I'm like kind of weirdly proud about it. I don't know if I should say that, but here we are. So what have you seen in terms of companies really trying to incorporate diverse voices, to highlight folks that maybe wouldn't otherwise have a platform to be seen?
I do see more of this in B2B, and I see it not only on marketing teams, a little bit more in leadership, boards of directors. I see that there's a much greater consciousness of the need for it. And I think whenever you can start to have a company that represents your customer base and your buyer and user base, it starts to create a richer opportunity for marketers, not only for the content that you create, but to really understand the ins and outs of what matters to your customer across the board, because it's not just about what it is that you're selling, but it's about how you contribute to what matters to them as people, back to the role in the brand. And I don't think you can do that unless you have a more diverse workforce.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, the other piece of that I see from a couple of different standpoints. So, as an event organizer, Marketing Profs produces an annual B2B marketing event every year. And so, to your point about just being being aware of the need to include, more diverse voices, that's something that I'm definitely aware of as an event programmer. And so, just like you were speaking about a second ago, Alex, too, and to me, it's important to include more diverse voices and to have people who look not like me, right, on stages, in part because to give them opportunities, but also because, the people that we all sell to are not exactly like us. And I think we need to raise awareness about that as well. So provide those opportunities, but also make sure that our customers see themselves reflected in our programs, in our marketing, and in everything that we do, because, we don't sell to people exactly like us. The world is a whole lot more diverse than that. So I 100% agree. I think we have a ways to go, certainly. But I think in 2021, we saw steps in that direction, and hopefully we'll continue to explore that in 2022.
Yeah, I think, given all the research that has come out, it's been proven again and again that diversity is it's better for business. It's better for internal business. It's better for external business. But it seems to me that companies are having a hard time figuring out really how to take ownership of that. And they think, well, how does that affect my day to day? Like maybe it's the lead of our org that's going to take care of that. So I think there'll be more in the new year around taking ownership of that. And that beginning from the top down. Okay, so up next is a segment I'm very excited about. We haven't done this in a really long time on Live with Marketers, and it's called Hot or Not. B2B marketing, guys, not dating. Get your mind out of it. Okay, so B2B marketing, hot or not. I'm gonna mention some trends. Anne and Carla have made these amazing illustrations to indicate if it's hot or not. I don't know if you guys want to showcase those now or if they can be surprises during the segment.
No, surprises.
Big reveal, Alex.
Big reveal. Got it. Yeah. I love it. Love the style. Okay, so I'm going to run through with some of my terms here, and we can go ahead and get started. Account-based marketing, hot or not?
I'm putting mine up. I'm saying it's still hot.
It's hot.
Yes, completely agree. Personalization is more important now than ever. Influencer marketing. Hot.
100%. Yeah.
I mean, technically what I'm doing right now is influencer marketing because I've invited influencers on to my marketing program. So I guess I should say it's hot as well.
I'm feeling better about myself right now, Alex, and my place in the world. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and actually, I feel like I look exactly like this guy, so I think you're 100% right.
I think you do. I like that. I like the red highlights in your hair, Anne.
Yeah, I think I'm like 10% less cranky than he looks then. So and maybe 10%
more of an
less
angry snowman kind of thing.
It does look like an angry snowman. I like it though.
Yeah, it's like a snowman with a bad wig.
Rona behind him.
Interactive marketing.
You tried really hard, and that's what's important. Whoa!
I went not.
Okay, real quick, why not?
And I went not because I guess I just haven't seen examples that really knock me off my feet. And I think for it to be really hot, I'd like to see it be better used.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Anna and I disagree. There's friction, there's tension.
Yeah, I feel like this is getting ugly real fast.
It's good that we're not doing this in a live studio because I'd have to put a barrier in between you two.
Yeah,
but luckily,
I feel like I should have a third image now.
like so.
Rock'em Sock'em Robots or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, maybe.
Women in CMO and CEO roles.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to say on fire for that one. Definitely agree. And
For
also,
sure.
women are
For
crushing it in
sure.
marketing right now, just
Yeah.
in general. Sales and
Agreed.
marketing alignment.
Honestly, I'm just looking for an opportunity to show this guy. I actually feel like so I'm not even voting my heart right now. I'm just because I wanted to show my not man.
I
I
think you're
wanted
being
to
more
show
diverse in your answers, Anne.
what's his name? The Cold Miser, is that his name?
Heat
It's Heat Miser and Cold Miser. Cold Miser, is that his name?
I don't know.
Show Miser.
I'm liking how defined his jawline is. It's impressive.
I do too. It's
Yeah,
rugged.
thank you.
It's rugged.
Rugged.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood rugged.
Yeah, I used myself as the model.
No, definitely not.
Right
All right,
It's Jay Leno in there, Anne.
yeah, I can see that. Okay, chat bots.
Oh boy. You know what? I really not. Oh boy. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to
go
agree with
not.
Anne on that.
Okay, and a quick why not?
I find chat bots as something people use but aren't intentional about why they should be used. And so it's kind of like back to interactive marketing. Even more so, I'm not seeing them used well or with a clearly defined intention or strategy. And I think the experience, therefore, it delivers isn't great.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think that they're used as I think they can be used well if there's actually a person who's monitoring-ish a little bit about what's going on there. But my experience, and this is only as on the consumer side of things, like as I'm traveling around the internet, just in my daily life, like I have yet to encounter a chatbot that I was like, thank you, chatbot. That was an incredible experience.
Without sarcasm.
Yeah, like when you call a company, like literally call a company on the phone, and all you're doing is like shouting representative because you just want to talk to an actual person. Like that happened to me just last week, right? Where it's like they kept, press 1, and I'm like representative. Like I literally looked.
Your
like
response is not one of our selections.
Representative, yeah.
I know.
Oh my God. And so I always feel that way when I'm in a chatbot situation too. I'm like trying to close out of it. And it's like, can I have your email address in case we get disconnected? And I was like, no, you may not. No.
Yeah, that's exactly the example I was going to use, because in an effort to be helpful, you're actually creating a really frustrating experience with a brand that even though it's not necessarily their fault because it's a machine, you're connecting that like really frustrating negative experience to the brand. So unless it's done really well and intentionally, it's just like, don't do it, I think.
You really hit a personal hot button for Anne and me there, Alex. With that.
Yeah, I think so. We'll have to circle back to that later. Yeah. Again, one of my most hated buzzwords. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Circle back. Okay, next one. Newsletters.
Oh, heck yeah.
Hot.
Love. Okay, I am all for that too. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a bit. So I'll save the commentary around that. Artificial intelligence.
I'm saying hot.
I think it's hot too. Yeah, I just did a program on this yesterday, and I totally agree. And the funny thing about artificial intelligence, it's like some of you who are here today might be rolling your eyes a little bit, like, oh God, like artificial intelligence. But the thing is, like, we're already using artificial intelligence. You just maybe don't recognize it as that, right? So, like, if any of you are Grammarly users, for example, I use Grammarly religiously. And it's, that's a form of artificial intelligence, right? When it's telling me not only that I'm spelling something incorrectly, but when it's giving me like a tone read on a tweet that I'm writing or something like that. It's like, you sound a little angry. Do you need a therapist? And I was like, yes, Grammarly. Thank you. I absolutely do. It's that kind of thing.
But I think that, and even with some of the stuff we'll get into with privacy.
Yeah.
It's really significant.
I agree. Okay, last one, then we'll move on. Although this has been a lot of fun, so we're gonna have to do this again at some point. Nostalgia marketing.
I said,
really?
Not.
Oh, wow.
Why? You're not nostalgic? You don't yearn for the past?
You know what? And I want to thank Bailey Mullins for saying that it's winter miser. Although I have icicles here. I feel that there's it's winter miser. We should use it a little bit to push people on a trajectory into the future. And I guess I'm just tired of it myself.
In marketing in general, you mean?
Yeah, in marketing in general. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I got to say that in a B2B context, I'm not sure that nostalgia marketing is really a thing. But I guess I'm voting hot because in consumer marketing, I think we saw a whole lot of it in 2021 heading into 2022, especially on TikTok.
Yeah.
I mean, tons of nostalgia marketing on TikTok, like calling out like the berries and cream sound that is on TikTok. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about here, but it's like berries and cream, berries and cream.
Yep.
Old Starbucks Starburst commercial. Or like the way that Cheerios did this whole thing, General Mills did this whole thing around the grandma in Cheerios and bringing her back on. They launched that campaign on TikTok. So in that way, I think it's interesting because it's like this nostalgia marketing, these nostalgia campaigns meeting TikTok, which is like the most 2021, 2022 thing ever, right? So I like the marriage of those two things.
Yeah. And you're right. You don't see it too much in the context of B2B. You're not like, oh, like our products used to not work that well, and now they work well. Like,
you know, I gotta say though, I mean, I gotta say, like in nostalgia marketing and B2B, like who wouldn't love to see like Clippy hosting a live stream?
Exactly.
You know, Microsoft's Clippy. Why don't we see that? Like, I think it's just undervalued. So
I do love that.
Someone needs to bring Clippy back.
I'm all for it. I'll go straight to Satya right away and we'll discuss.
There you go.
Make it happen. Come on, Alex, make it happen.
On your to-do list, Alex.
But I was just going to say that, like, we're kind of laughing about it, but like B2B tech buying decisions are actually more emotional than we would think.
Right.
And the research shows that like people are just, even like in a post-pandemic world, I think everyone's just has a little bit more of the feels, and like we're just making more emotional decisions. So I think it'd be interesting to bring it definitely more into the B2B arena. Okay, that was fun. We're moving on to some of the a segment called Best in the Industry, brought to you by brought to you by all of us, but brought to you by Ann Handley. And Ann, I'm going to let you take it away. I believe you have a couple. Sponsored by Ann Handley.
Sponsored by Ann Handley. It's not sponsored by Ann Handley. Yeah, I do. So I looked at I won't say I looked at every single B2B campaign, but I thought about the ones that really bubbled up for me in 2021, and I thought we could just have some fun and award some prizes virtually to some of our favorite B2B marketing campaigns of 2021. So first up is a campaign, essentially a content launch by Vidyard. And if we could bring the first slide up there. So Vidyard is a video platform that helps marketing and sales connect more personally and sell more robustly, I guess you could say, to prospects. And in June of this year, Vidyard did something where they created a mini documentary called Reconnection, and Reconnection essentially tells the stories of how real people are connecting with others in a pandemic remote world, right? So how are we actually connecting with one another? What does that mean for the future of business? So what you saw there right now is the homepage. Features Old Man Steve, who is this TikTok star, 84 years old, I think he is, TikTok star. If we can go to the next slide now. So what they did, though, is the way they launched it is why I think this program is so significant. So what you're looking at here is they hosted essentially a red carpet event, a premiere event, and they brought together a bunch of the people that they interviewed for this program. You see them there. There's Steve, there's David Meerman Scott, there's Brian Solis down in the corner there. All kinds of people to talk about what they, their experience and just to sort of tease through the program. So they showed the film and then they had a panel discussion. And then if we can go to the next slide for a minute there we go. And then they also produced a guide to how we should be thinking about connecting with one another in a virtual world. If we can go to the next slide. I want to just talk a little bit about, if we can leave this up here just for a few minutes so I can talk it through. I want to talk about why I think this launch strategy was so great, why I'm calling it out now. Number one, they launched this red carpet program for this mini documentary. So typically, I think the default in marketing, B2B and B2C and throughout, all industries is to launch with a big splash, right? to sort of take your marketing campaign and just toss it like big cannonball into the deep end, right? Let's make as much splash as we can. But instead, what Vidyard did is the opposite of that, and what I would call is like a slow marketing plan. They instead handpicked a selection of B2B influencers, and they invited them to this exclusive premiere event. So rather than just putting it up on YouTube and putting it out everywhere, they invited us individually, and I was one of the people they invited to this program to experience this panel discussion and the launch of this film as well, right? So the other piece of it that I really loved is that, yes, that component, that the documentary itself was on demand. Like, they gathered us all together, they introduced what they were going to be doing today, they were going to show the video for 16 minutes long, then they were going to have a live discussion. So a few minutes ago, we were talking about the importance of including some live trigger, otherwise what's the point of showing up? And so they included both, right? It was on demand as well as live. They also did a good job, I think, of marrying these two things of content and ABM, because part of the goal of the premiere was to pique interest not only from influencers like me, but champions at key customer accounts, right? So it was a good combination of content and ABM together. And if you're going to do a program like this, if it's a slow roll as opposed to that cannonball into the deep end and creating as much splash as possible, you have to have different metrics, right? You have to think about, well, what are you actually measuring? Like, how do you measure an approach like this? And so they had to change up their metrics. And so Tyler Lessard, who's the CMO there, looked at different metrics. He just didn't look at, the total number of MQLs. Instead, it was like, well, what kind of conversations are we having? Who is showing up? Who are we actually connecting with? Are we connecting with those key accounts? And then the final point is the language that they used when they described it on the landing page, on the invite to me. It wasn't a content launch. They called it a red carpet event. Like, they called it an event, so it felt different. It felt special. They called it a film. They just didn't call it a content asset or even a video. They called it a film. So it automatically elevated it. And then even Tyler, for a time, Tyler Lessard, the CMO of Vidyard, even he for a time had, like, in his SIG file and his email, it was like executive producer of Reconnection, the film. So it's the words that they used and the way that they rolled out this program, which I think it was just like, it was so well done and really one of the best programs that I saw in 2021.
Great. Yeah, I think the power of language is definitely important. We used to call what we're doing now a webinar. And then I was like, that doesn't sound like something I want to come to. Like,
so much more than that.
We used to do like voiceover slides and call it a webinar. And then I was like, why can't we do video? Like, we should do video. And now we call them live broadcasts. And now we made a franchise out of it, Live with Marketers. So yeah, I love that. I think the power of language is so important.
Well, and I think they did a fantastic job of starting with the whole approach of looking at the experience that they're going to create. Mm-hmm. And I think it's such a tremendous opportunity, and they did a fantastic job of executing on it. And they started out by just flipping the thinking of what's traditionally done and how things are done. And they did that balance between live and on demand. And I like, Anne, how you talked about the different metrics, because I think one of the things that we tend to get in the habit of, here are the metrics that we measure. But I think, again, starting out with that experience and looking at different things, I think all of the different metrics give them different insights. And that's why Vidyard is so good at what they do.
Yeah, I agree. And I just noticed a comment from Leoden in the comments. Hi, Lee. Also, if anybody here is looking for help with connecting with influencers, he is your guy. So check out Lee and his agency.
Awesome.
The other thing that I just wanted to say, just because I was thinking that you were going to say this, Carla, and since you didn't, then I feel like I have to say it. But
put words in my mouth.
Did. Yeah, you're welcome. So this is Anne speaking as Carla now. They did a really nice job with the storytelling aspect of it, right? Because that documentary was not about how awesome Vidyard is, and it wasn't even how awesome video is. Instead, it was about how do we maintain connection in a world where we are all sequestered away in our home offices or in our tiny house studios in your backyard, like I am right now. So really, the foundation of that was the power of story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the fact that it was focused, like you said, like enough separated from the brand itself, where it was focused on the solution, not necessarily the product, which is like the right way to be talking about it.
Right. So two other can I move on now, Alex? Are you good with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So Alex asked us to come up with like our top marketing campaign that we loved in 2021. But I'm the kind of person that likes to over deliver, really. So I came up with 3. But Vidyard, I think, was like, it really blew me out of the. It just blew the others out of the water, and it really blew me away. And so, but I do have 2 others that I just wanted to give some love to. The second one, which I'm giving so Vidyard, I would give a gold medal to. I want to give a silver medal though to Tenant. We can throw up that slide. There we go. So what you're looking at here is the landing page for a program called Custodians Are Key. And Tenant is a B2B manufacturer, essentially. And one of the things that they manufacture are these floor cleaning machines. Like they're almost like a Zamboni, but custodians ride them in schools, universities. You see them sometimes in shopping malls when, if you go to a shopping mall. And essentially what Tenant did is they created a program to call out custodians working in schools. Now, the reason why I think this is so awesome is because it's really taking this idea of this thing that they create and bringing it into the community and showing how it lives in the world, really telling the story of that. But it's also celebrating not necessarily the buyers of these products who tend to be procurement at cities or towns or sometimes commercial real estate managers or property managers. They didn't necessarily celebrate them, but instead they celebrated the people who ultimately use these machines. And so I love that so much. I also love, by the way, that the way that you nominate a custodian for a program like that is through an essay contest, completely old school, that you just write a couple of paragraphs about the person. And as Carla was talking about at the start of this conversation today, just the importance of writing. I love the way that they highlighted that. So,
yeah. Well, and everybody writes.
Yes, I have heard that. Yeah.
So
rumor has it.
That's Nina Van's book for those that didn't catch on to that, or one of her books. Okay. Bring us home with the bronze.
All right, so my bronze goes to, if we can throw up the last slide that I have for this, it goes to Toast. Toast is a B2B technology company. What they sell is point of sale solutions and other products in their suite of solutions to help restaurants be more efficient and effective. It's a cloud-based point of sale system. What I love about what Toast did is, obviously restaurants very hard hit in a post-pandemic world, and they pivoted so much of how they showed up for the people they sell to. So what you're looking at here is their blog. It's called On the Line. What you're looking at is a top story there, your guide to restaurant relief in America. They've really become so much of a resource to the restaurant industry. Toast needs some love. I think the restaurant industry needs some love. And I love the way that Toast has really shown up for their customers, for the people they sell to, not just Toast customers, but to be a resource to any restaurant who's trying to figure out, like, how do I thrive in a post-pandemic world? So I think they've done a really nice job of completely pivoting how they're producing content away from just talking about their technology and how awesome it is and what it can do, and to become more of a resource to the restaurant industry in general. So that's my bronze.
Yes.
I think both of those examples, Anne, are great of B2B marketing companies that have really stepped beyond and understand how to talk about their story and deliver that experience that's truly customer focused. And I think that's why they stand out so great, because they understand that and they do a great job of executing on it. Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
Love it. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. That was amazing. And I love all those examples. And also, if you have any questions about those examples, we're happy to share links in the follow-up email. So just be sure to hit us up in the chat and we'll get more info over to you if you want more. But this is what everyone really came for, the predictions. The top predictions. Well, I came for the hot or not. Everyone else came for the top predictions. So let's talk about the top predictions for next year. I know that both of you guys have really interesting ones to go through. I think we can just volley off, and I'm going to start with you.
So, I was going to say that one of my top predictions for 2022 is that I thought Microsoft would produce an NFT. But do you know what? They actually already have. And then I thought, well, maybe what they'll do then is produce a Clippy NFT, since we're all in on Clippy right now. Turns out they've done that as well, or somebody has. So I was like, well, the best I can do then is to say that Clippy will become, my prediction for 2022 is that Clippy will become a greeter in the metaverse. That's my first prediction. So I absolutely believe that'll happen, or not. No, I'm actually kind of kidding. I think my biggest prediction actually is that companies will start to get serious about, especially in B2B companies, will start to get really serious about figuring out how do we thrive in a cookieless world. Our cookieless future is coming. Google keeps rolling the deadline, back further and further. I think right now it's 2023 where they're saying they're going to take away all cookies. But I think the smartest companies will start to position now in terms of, owning that first party data instead of relying on third party data. I think we're seeing some companies, really taking a forward looking approach to that, and thinking through what does this actually mean for us? Sometimes when I talk about this, I feel that B2B marketers will kind of glaze over, oh God, is that really my job? Doesn't that belong to IT, or doesn't belong to legal? Is it really? But I say this with love in my heart, but it absolutely is all of our jobs. I think it's really going to change the way that we connect with our prospects and customers online. And so what we can do in 2022 to position for a cookieless future, I think is critical. So I think that's a big area of focus for 2022.
Yeah, I mean, it changes a lot of the capabilities of the marketing tools that we continue to invest in. So I think it's definitely important for every B2B marketer for sure. And I actually think that although while some might still kind of view it as scary, I think it's actually going to make us all better marketers in the long run. Maybe that's just my positive spin on it, but I really do think that that's where it's going to take us.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because I think the better our data is, and how we get it and acquire it, it's just going to lead to better content. It's going to lead us to have better information that we make decisions on. And I think that's one thing that's really been missing is the quality of things that we're basing our decisions on. And I think the more we can think about what is it that we're using and how are we connecting with our customers and our audiences, it just leads to smarter marketing.
Yep. Agreed. So, Anne, let's talk about feelings. Is empathy going to be big? Do you want to talk about your feelings?
Oh man, I feel like this whole segment is all about my feelings. I think, and I think that Carla touched on this too, just the way that B2B marketers are, kind of loosening up a little bit and giving ourselves permission to speak more vulnerably with our prospects and our customers. And I think part of that has been the result of the pandemic. We saw a number of executives, in a post-pandemic world, suddenly realizing I think if we're going to connect with our customers, we do have to use more emotion in our marketing. And Alex, you mentioned this a second ago too, but I felt the need to just kind of highlight what you said, which is that very often B2B is a more emotional decision. If I go to, CVS and I pick a pack of gum from under the counter, that does not really affect my life one way or another, even if I ultimately hate the pack of gum that I bought, right? And so the B2B buying decision, though, is fraught with way more emotion than that. We tend to think of it in the opposite way, right? We tend to think of it as not emotive, but it actually is very emotive, because people's jobs and reputations and lives and the way they think about themselves, their self-esteem is all of that is on the line. So what does that mean? That means that B2B is a far more emotional decision ultimately than I think we give it credit for, or than we acknowledge, I should say. And so I do think that empathy in B2B is incredibly important and will continue to be in 2022.
Yeah. And I think even beyond that, it's having empathy for our buyers. And I always say, I mean, I feel like I can say this because I come from a family of left brain engineers. Engineers have emotions too. And we tend to default to, we have to prove all of this, especially to engineers, but really adding in that empathy. And part of empathy is looking at simplification. And Siegel and Gale came out yesterday with their annual Simplicity Index. And there's so much about that consumer experience that people focus on to remove the friction, to make it more simple, because they have empathy for us as consumers. But people have that same expectation in the B2B buying world. And I think we need to look at how empathy plays out in that way. I also see some other brands who are being much more empathetic in the stories that they tell. I look at some of the new things that are coming out from the Copeland brand with Emerson, and they're showing pictures of little teeny babies and talking about the impact that what they sell has on sleep and, quality of life and things like that. That's very empathetic in talking about their customers and how they impact them. And I think that's a sophisticated approach, not only just to storytelling, but understanding how to infuse empathy in that story across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking, Carla, that the tenant example that I gave about, like thank a custodian, that's a prime example of that as well, isn't it? I just never thought of it that way, but yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm. Babies and puppies.
Yes.
Always do well. I'm thinking about putting my dog on some of our marketing solutions ads and seeing what happens.
Yeah, little Augie may hire out. I know he has quite the Instagram following. So. He is already a professional model.
That's true. Yeah, as well, a supermodel. Really.
Supermodel,
not just a model, but yeah,
he's pretty face.
He's pretty busy. So I don't know, but we'll see. Maybe I can squeeze him in somewhere.
Maybe 20.
John Burkhardt is here.
Hey, John.
His face, yeah.
I wish that we could maybe next year we'll have like call in. We'll have callers that can call in and we can put them on camera. There's probably some privacy issues with that as we're talking about privacy issues, but we can hope. Okay, so let's move on. What are some of the other tactics that should be on your list of things to definitely incorporate in your strategy next year?
I'm going to jump in with newsletters because I think Ann Handley is probably the living, breathing example of how to do a fantastic newsletter. And I know she's been focused on this the last couple of years. And I've gone to things, events and webinars and clubhouses where she talks about building her newsletter. And, this is a person to learn from. But I think with newsletters, that ability to use it as a nurturing tactic and building that audience and building that relationship, that emotional connection, the empathy, everything that we've been talking about, and using it not just for personality and building that relationship, but looking at data and being able to connect in a different way. I think that's something that's going to continue to evolve. And I know, Anne, you definitely have opinions on this, but I mean, I think it's a huge example of how we really need to take advantage and look at something that I think a lot of B2B brands don't appreciate the potential for what it can do.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's, I think, whenever I speak to audiences, marketing audiences, I always ask, like one of my standing questions is, do you have an email newsletter? And, probably 99% of the room when we would be in a room together would, raise their hands. And it's like, yes, I have an email newsletter. But then when I say, how many of you are proud of your email newsletter? You see those hands kind of like go down. And I think that's the problem with email newsletters in 2021, 2020, and heading into 2022 as well. And so I produced a guide that could be useful to you if you're interested. It's called How to Newsletter. It's an extension of what I've learned from my work with my own email newsletter over the past 3 years. And if you're interested in that too, you can subscribe at annhandley.com/newsletter. I've learned a whole lot about what works and what doesn't. I do think that it's vastly undervalued by so many marketers out there. And one of my trends that I predict seeing in 2022 is that more brands will start to rethink their email newsletter and start to really appreciate it for all of the reasons that Carla just mentioned, but also some of the reasons we were talking about a minute ago, right? The need to connect emotionally with your prospects and customers, really show who you are in your email newsletter, and also have that data first strategy, because what isn't affected by cookies is your email newsletter, right? You own that data. And so there's a lot of reasons why I think email newsletters are so critical. And thank you so much, Carla. Carla, by the way, also has a fantastic email newsletter. So as generous as she was calling me out, I have to do her a solid as well, because her email newsletter is also amazing. So please subscribe to that as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it's a really good opportunity for B2B marketers really to rethink that email strategy and how we use it. And it's not just about product updates and, essentially our news releases have now moved to emails and things like that, but to really be thoughtful and strategic about how to create that relationship and expand it, I think, too.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah.
And hopefully, I'm sure your blog post has this in, but maybe just like some tips on like cadence and length and like visuals versus text. Like, I think those are all things that marketers are going to be thinking about, because you're right. Like, people have kind of lost faith in newsletters. So like, what is it that I still have faith in them because I know that ours work, but we have had to go through some iterations in terms of like sending them weekly versus daily, and like the amount of content that is within each, and et cetera. So, but let's not dwell on it too much more, because we have a lot of more trends to get to, and we only have 9 minutes left, and we need time for questions. So,
oh my Lord.
I know, right? Right.
So much.
So let's talk about, I think this is really important because we touched on it a bit earlier, but it's worth re-mentioning, is the infusion of creativity in B2B and the need for that. So Carla, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, you bet, because this is really a hot button for me. And I mean, over the years, we've heard over and over. I think the first time I heard this was Beth Comstock, probably 10 years ago, talking about B2B has the reputation of being boring to boring. And I think there's so much opportunity for creativity in B2B now more than ever. And I think with the last 2 years that we've been through, one of the gifts of all of this is that people know that whatever we have been doing probably isn't the thing that's going to work going forward. So they're much more open to trying something new. And in that, my last book that I wrote, Rethink Innovation, I teach people how to actually take inspiration from other places and infuse it into B2B marketing. And I have deep examples of those. But I think even as we look at what's going on in the consumer world, a lot of times as B2B marketers, we say, well, of course they can do that. They're a consumer brand. They have more money, they have more leeway. They have, you can fill in a lot of excuses, but I think there's so much inspiration that we can take from what's going on in consumer brands. And even as we look at, the marriage of different things, even though I'm not a big fan of nostalgia marketing, but how brands are partnering that with TikTok and new platforms and doing all of this mix and matching. And I think even rethinking how we test things and pilot them, and what ideas we're willing to trial and, put some time and investment behind. I think that's something that's really, that we're really going to see a lot more willingness to do in 2022.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think that you also, Carla has a couple of chapters of her book within Rethink Innovation around this topic. So if you wouldn't mind just showing the lower third link on that whenever we have a chance, team. Perfect. So if you go to that link, you could read 3 free chapters. Say that 3 times really fast. Of her book. So and then it'll hopefully prompt you to want to read more and get the book in its entirety. All right. So let's see. Let's talk about maybe one more trend, just because it is a kind of like a buzzword, thought leadership. I know a lot has changed around thought leadership. What is it exactly, and how can companies better leverage it in 2022? Anyone can. Anna, we'll go with you.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think that there is more focus on thought leadership, but I think what's changed in 2021, at least one of the things that I noticed, is that companies took their thought leadership a whole lot more seriously, right? So, and the way that what they considered thought leadership, I think, changed, and how they presented it changed. Many other things we're talking about here today. But I think one of the things that I definitely saw was companies taking a more identifiable, I guess is what I would say, a more identifiable point of view. So rather than just spouting what everybody else was spouting around a particular item or topic or something that relates to your industry, thinking about who that thought leader is that's sharing their perspective and identifying the actual human behind that. So rather than a white paper like that espouses some thought leadership from the brand, instead what I saw was more thought leadership that was actually authored by actual subject matter experts within organizations. And in the way that they were sharing those perspectives, they used a human accessible tone. They spoke in like more warmly, like it wasn't all buttoned up and straitjacket. It was very accessible to a lot of people. So I think it continues on some of the trends that we're talking about here, but at the same time, maybe a little bit of a different spin as relates to thought leadership and the what we've seen over the past decade of its evolution.
And I think part of that comes from the Edelman Trust Barometer and what we're seeing about who people trust, and expecting leaders in business to take a more specific, concrete stand on topics. And I think as we look at being able to move from, there's like thought leadership, I think a lot of times has been looked at as research and reporting rather than truly delivering insights. And I think to your point, Anne, a lot of that has come forward this year, and making it more personal and having a person behind that thought leadership rather than just a brand. Yep.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Right.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because that word trust, right? We need to be able to build trust in individuals, which is a whole lot easier when you know the person and you understand where they're coming from and you see their face.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And what I was also going to say too is another research report that we did this year found that folks want to buy from companies whose leaders take a stand on social issues. So hearing that you are actually that you have an opinion on things, which has typically been something that companies don't really want to take a stand on because they want to be Switzerland.
You're right.
But it turns out that people really want to know what leaders of companies think before they buy from them. So again, it's an emotional experience for everyone. Okay, so let's get to some of the questions that we have here. I know there were more trends, and maybe we can do a follow-up blog post that includes all of them for our wonderful guests. But we're going to dive into Q&A. Before we do, you'll see a survey pop up on your screen. If you wouldn't mind just filling it out, it's just like 3 or 4 questions. Basically, we want to know how we did, how we can make this broadcast series better in the future. What topics do you want to hear about? So we really appreciate your feedback as always. And then into the questions. So this is, let's see, the first one comes from Matt. He says, what are your thoughts on employee personal branding for 2022? Do you expect more B2B companies to empower their employees to participate in social as ambassadors?
I do, because I think it goes back to what we just talked about and thought leadership. And one of the things that has shown to help with employee retention and engagement is to let people have their voice and to uplift them as these subject matter experts, and to bring them forward and to really spotlight them. And I think, if you just rely on a marketing or PR department to create that thought leadership and expertise, you're really limiting, back to diversity and inclusion, who you show and who you spotlight. And I think we'll see more of it in 2022 from brands who really understand how to build those relationships.
Yeah, I think so too. And I would say, I think what I've seen is a lot of brands actually encouraging that, because I think they've realized, there used to be this kind of mindset that, well, what happens if this person becomes like a social media star, or they build their personal brand and they leave the company? But I don't think companies are as worried about that anymore. I think instead they understand that, maybe that's a little bit of a risk, but it's not as big of a risk as brands have built it up in their brains to think it is. And instead, I think what we're seeing is that instead it empowers employees to really to become the best versions of themselves, and as a result also help build the brand. I mean, look at what Alex is doing right here. So,
absolutely.
great example.
Thank you. I did not tell them to say that, but I appreciate that. Okay, the next question is, how do conservatively thinking B2B companies go about embracing the change when the founders are old-fashioned?
And I guess you can define change in a lot of different ways, but one of the things that I've seen be really helpful is show an example of where the change is happening already, and then break down for them why it worked and how you can relate that into your own brand, because it's not a matter of just copy and pasting it. And I think that's one of the things, especially with old guard leadership, that makes them lean back and cross their arms and say, no, that's not how we do things this way. It's because they don't understand why this worked or how it worked, and they don't have any context for what to do with it in their own environment. And I think whenever B2B marketers can start to connect the dots and break things down, and it does take patience and it takes time, and it's a little bit of consistent pressure over a long period of time to get people who are used to thinking in a certain way to start to change. But sometimes it's also just a sense of urgency, with what's changing in an industry and the impact that it can have if they don't change.
Exactly. Okay, well, that's all the time that we have for today, and I feel bad because there's so many more questions, but we'll try to get to them again. Like I said, maybe in a follow-up blog post, some interesting ones about advice for B2B startup businesses. So we'll get to that hopefully in a blog post that I will send out in the follow-up email. Thank you so much to our audience for being here, for being so engaged, for sending us amazing questions, for just tagging along on this conversation, and of course to my wonderful guests, Ann and Carla. It's like truly an honor to have both of you guys on this show, and I'm just super pumped that this is how I'm close.
That's awesome. Thank you for having me. You know, Carla, I think it's time for us to rate Alex as a host. Are you ready?
I'm totally ready. Where's my cue card with all the stars on it?
Do you think that do you think that Alex as a host is hot or not?
Oh, definitely. If only I had like 3 or 4 of these. You know, I think also maybe next show we could release these as NFT artwork. Do you think, Ann? Maybe there's a little bit of potential there.
Yeah, I think
definitely.
So. Why not? Yeah.
It's always great to collaborate with the LinkedIn team. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so
for
much.
everything that you do to elevate B2B marketing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to give a shout out to our next broadcast happening January 30th, 2022. We're going to be launching the annual B2BI Trends, which are a little bit different from these trends. The B2BI Trends are part of our B2B Institute think tank, and they talk about more of like both contrarian and right trends. Super interesting, a little spicy and controversial, so don't miss that one. Like I said, we'll send a follow-up email with the recording and some of the resources we mentioned. And thank you so much. I hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday, and see you in 2022.